Alrighty, guys. Welcome to the party here. Starting off with a question, Bob. Love it when we start with them right away.
Mm-hmm.
So he's 6-0. First off, gotta love that, my man George. Gotta love that you're 6-0.
Gotta love it.
So what do we got here? Team is Tua, McCaffrey, Kenneth, Cup, Olave, the Gogurt. Your flex is Cook, and your bench is Warren. Okay, cool. What's the question here? The question is, should I trade Waddle or wait for him to boom of Cook and sell high on another running back?
So to answer your question,
It's a good
George,
question.
there's a lot going on here, and I think that it's important to if you're looking at this and you're looking at your overall welfare of your team, right? So
Mhm.
you have Cup and Olave, you have Deontay coming back. Jamison Williams looks like he could perform at a very high level. And Waddle is coming off of an injury. He had a pretty good game when he was in last week, got the touchdown. So the
Mhm.
question here is Cook. Now, with Christian McCaffrey's oblique injury, I'm going to bring up why I think this question here is Cook. With McCaffrey's oblique injury, I think, you have a little hesitation of trading Cook because
Mhm.
you want to keep him and your other running backs. I mean, there's potential out of Warren, there's potential out of Roschon, there's potential out of Zach Evans for at least the next couple of weeks.
Mhm.
But Cook is a valuable asset to a degree. Now, here is why I would say don't do this trade yet. We know that Damian Harris got injured last week, and we hope that Damian Harris is going to be okay.
Mhm.
Latavius Murray is also in the way of James Cook. But James Cook has been performing okay-ish. It's not his first couple of weeks were better than the last couple of weeks. But I think holding him and waiting for him to have a really, really good game could probably get you a better asset at running back, which you definitely need. Cup and Olave and Deontay, Dell, and JSN and those guys are good enough for you to last for a long time in terms of the running or in terms of the wide receiver situation. So the flex situation for you on a week to week basis, you want to really figure out. And I think that Cook as a flex right now isn't bad. And I think that Cook could potentially turn into something better, especially with the Harris injury. It's unfortunate for Harris. But I'm on the side of waiting on Cook.
I'm also on the side of waiting, but for the other reason. Um, Waddle is one of the guys that I have projected as being a stud over the remainder of the regular season for fantasy. And the main reason is Hill's injury. I know Hill came back in the game, but when you start talking about leg injuries with speedsters like that, they tend to quickly erode. And like I said, I wouldn't. I want to sit on Waddle. I think there's a chance that Waddle ends up bursting into the top 5-ish neighborhood, and to trade him right before he does that is just super
Joe,
unwise.
he's
I don't
trading
want to do it.
for Waddle. He's trading for Waddle, not trading Waddle. He's trading for Waddle.
Well, then absolutely get Waddle. Sorry, I take that back. Get Waddle. The answer is get Waddle while you can. Maybe not move Cook as your trade in there. Looking at your roster earlier, I would consider maybe even doing something where you're moving Olave or Cup. Probably Cup would be my leaning in that direction. But definitely get Waddle. That's one of my main guys looking forward moving ahead here. And Bob, one of the themes that we wanted to talk about entering this week is a
Thanks,
trade that
George.
the trade. Yeah, thanks, George. By the way, is a trade that I did, and we were talking about here, and how we're very different sides of this. So earlier today, I received George Pickens and Devontae Smith for Josh Jacobs and Myers from the Raiders, and both of which is because I need to get rid of the Raiders. The Raiders are one of the lowest scoring teams in the NFL. The Jimmy G thing scares the hell out of me. They don't have a good offensive line. And quite frankly, they're not a good football team. And I understand Josh Jacobs is immensely talented. He went off the chains last year, and he easily could again. but I have the luxury of already having Laporta. So
Mhm.
getting a potentially up and coming Myers was irrelevant to me. And I looked at it and said, you know what? I'm basically trading Josh Jacobs for Devontae Smith and George Pickens. I think I want to do that. And that's how I broke down that trade this morning.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at teams that have the potential to really go sideways super fast, one of those teams does feel like the Las Vegas Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why I'm a little bit hesitant, though, to sell Raiders players, and I know the Jimmy G injury does factor into this decision as well, um, but the Raiders have both Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams rank in the top 5 of red zone targets. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's telling me that the Raiders are moving the ball. Yes, they might not be scoring.
Well, that's the thing. They don't
moving.
have the many attempts. It's when they're there, they can't convert. So there's more plays where these guys are in there.
Yes, there is a lot of attempts, but what I'm looking at though is that will those the attempts are there, so yeah, there's going to be the most attempts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we pull up, let's say we pull up Devontae Adams for a minute. I'm going to pull up the Raiders right now.
Go for it.
And let's pull up the Raiders, and just in quarterback, just Jimmy G hasn't been extremely stellar, to say the least.
No, he is
right
not.
now. Aiden O'Connell came in. Brian Hoyer has thrown a couple of passes here and there. But overall, there's nothing about the Raiders just like I need to have an Oakland Raider, or I have to have a Vegas Raiders player right now.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing too, is that when we look at the targets, right? Devontae Adams said 14 targets in the red zone. Jacoby Myers has a 9. Josh Jacobs is productive is getting looked at in the red zone as well. But like you said, it's important to understand that just because you're getting more looks, that your team's not converting. The Raiders are not converting. But if a couple of those plays ever start to convert, those are guys that are going to get the ball, right? Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers. These are players that, although Devontae Adams has been having a down season by the stretch of Adams's skill set, right?
Yeah.
These two players, when Jimmy G is out on the field, Jacoby Myers looks like is a really good guy to own.
In the first 2 weeks, he was.
He still has been. I mean, he scored 14 points in PPR last week as well. So that's good for a wide receiver 3, potentially a wide receiver 2. Devontae Adams, though, on the other end, outside of a couple of games towards the beginning of the season, he had a 20-pointer and I think a 40-pointer. The last 2 weeks have been pretty down against teams that he should have been able to beat. But he is also injured. And so there is a lot to say about that injury. Now, when it comes to Josh Jacobs, on the other hand, Josh Jacobs has been, and this is something we had talked about way earlier in the season, is that he's been super unproductive behind this line when it's trying to move the ball downfield. He's had 107 attempts and 312 yards, right? So he's averaging 2.9 yards, and the yards after contact aren't great either. It's like 1 yard after contact. He is getting,
which means he's only going 1.9 yards before he gets hit. I mean, that's the testament of how bad that line is.
So, it's not looking good, and he doesn't break tackles. So for me, I would have liked to have keep Jacoby Myers because I think that he still has some value.
No. It wasn't Jacoby Myers I traded.
Oh, you said Jacoby Myers.
It was the tight end Mayer.
Oh, I thought you said Myers.
No, Mayer.
Mayer, on the other hand, he's looked like he's going to get more targets.
Yeah, he finally got targeted last week, but he only got targeted 6 times.
Yeah. I mean, I think that trade's a really good trade for you. If Devonta Smith can pull it together. I've been struggling with Devonta Smith myself. He's not getting targeted in the way that he was getting targeted last year. He is, but he's not doing anything with the targets that he has. I believe like last week he had, 2 catches on like 6 or 7 targets, something like that. It wasn't good. And I'm on the cusp. And this is the problem with Devonta Smith. A lot of Devonta Smith owners have probably went out and got a couple other wide receivers in the interim that are playing better than Devonta Smith right now. Adam Thielen
The
being
Tank
one
Dells of the world.
Adam Thielen is the number one wide receiver in PPR right now.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Adam Thielen way back in the offseason saying that this is a safety valve for Bryce Young, and that has proven to be true. He is getting targeted a whole bunch and is the number one wide receiver in fantasy because of that. Now, when it comes to Devonta Smith, he's getting targets. I mean, these targets are there. And it's not like that Jalen Hurts has totally ignored him. But A.J. Brown has been outplaying him every stretch of the imagination, right?
Yeah, A.J. Brown might be the best receiver in the league right now.
So Devonta Smith has 28 catches on 45 targets.
It's not good.
It's not great. And when you look at what A.J. Brown is doing, A.J. Brown has 42 on 60.
Yeah, one's well over 60%, almost 70, and one's under 60.
You're looking at like, okay, like where are these balls going? A.J. Brown is getting the ball down the field. Devonta Smith is not. Devonta Smith is not getting any yards after contact. He's not doing anything with his catches. He's catching it at a fairly far distance. I mean, he has a lot of great, like in terms of he has a lot of 10-yard, 4-yard, and he has some 50-yard plays. But he's not leaving up. He's not getting my confidence.
Here's the thing with Philadelphia overall. With their right tackle going down.
Up,
Yeah, well, the Philadelphia's had one major problem, and then the right tackle going down in Johnson is an add-on. Their major problem is they haven't found their running game like they had last year. And as much as we all hated on Sanders, which, again, he's not really lighting the world on fire, he gave something that Swift is not giving. And when we look at when Philadelphia's offense was the best, it was when Gainwell was in charge. But here's the thing. Gainwell's not as good of a player as Swift, and it doesn't make sense to me. So we got a new question flying in here from a Celtic, baby. All right.
I'm 5-1, traded Pittman for Jefferson. My other wide receivers are Keenan, CD, McLaurin, Diop, Palmer. Was this a good trade? Now, I'm on.
You got Jefferson. Yes.
So here's the thing, and this is what a lot of people are going to say to you, and a lot of people are going to say, well, hey, we don't know if Jefferson's going to play. Jefferson could be out the whole year. You're 5-1.
Jefferson will be back for the fantasy playoffs.
You're 5-1. Pittman is probably not cracking your lineup on a week-to-week basis. Once CD has his bye week, you're starting CD, you're starting Keenan Allen every single week. McLaurin is a decent enough flex. Maybe I would have tried to trade away McLaurin or D-Hop because I like Pittman a little bit better. But with that,
you got Jefferson.
You've got Jefferson.
Yeah.
And if you're 5-1, your team has already been producing at a really high pace. I think that this is a good trade, even if he doesn't play.
Just for the chance of it, yeah.
Just for the chance of it, come playoff time. Because the problem with the Vikings is that people are saying, well, the Vikings might be so far out of it that they don't risk an injury to Jefferson like the Rams didn't want to risk another injury for Kupp last year. And so you have that biting at you, and that probably is nagging a little bit. But I think you're fine. I think if you want to post the rest of your team, we can take a look at it too. But Keenan and CD have been producing this year. McLaurin has been producing less, but he's still capable of it. DeAndre Hopkins, we'll see what happens if they decide to go Will Levis after the bye week. I think with Will Levis, I think that Tennessee will be in better shape rather than whatever nonsense Malik Willis is doing. And I think that Palmer has a good chance to produce as well. So I'm okay with it, especially because you're 5-1. You took a chance. And if you didn't take the chance and he came back, you'd be kind of kicking yourself, right?
Yeah.
But Pittman is mid and he's good, but you have other valuable players that you're not going to miss Pittman.
Yeah, I mean, basically, first off, Celtics, I love this trade for a lot of reasons. Jefferson gives you a chance for an upside potential of getting north of 20 in your playoff games. And as much as I love McLaurin and Hop, you ain't getting that.
Yeah, you have a very solid team.
You have a very strong team. And but Bob, to your point about the Vikings shutting it down, when you look at the
that's a good team, and it's a good trade for you, Amon. I think that you'll find value. And even if like we said, even if he doesn't play, you took the chance. You gave up a player who, yes, Pittman is producing, but you gave up a player that is off and on as well. And and what I like about it is you made your decisions less on a week to week basis, is that you're no longer going to be fighting yourself and saying, in my third wide receiver spot, do I start McLaurin, D-Hop, or Pittman, and then hitting yourself if you start the wrong guy. You're starting CD and Keenan Allen every week. If it's a 2 wide receiver league, if it's a 3 wide receiver league, you're starting McLaurin, and then you're deciding in your flex if you want D-Hop. I mean, you've given yourself less decisions on a week-to-week basis. With the holidays coming around, you're going to be in a much better mood because you're not going to be screaming at yourself that you made the bad decision. And then come playoff time, you could be looking at Justin Jefferson coming back. And, Michael Pittman has been targeted 60 times, 40 receptions. He's been getting some touchdowns here and there, but of course, when I bet on him to get like 50 yards, he couldn't even get 50 yards, which is trouble.
You're getting too negative here, Bob.
But I
do believe a couple of things here. Just strictly talking about Jeff and returning. When we look at the numbers, both from what the market is telling us in the betting markets and what their mathematical win rate is based upon their points per and points allowed, they're still on pace to be just a tick over 9. And in the NFC, if you're in competition for 9 or 10 wins, you're going to have a chance of making the playoffs. And yes, this is going to come down a lot in these guys' cases of how do they end the year in their division, particularly against those Packers. But because they're the team that they're most likely fighting for those last 2 division spots, I don't see a way that the Minnesota Vikings, if they have a chance to be in the playoffs and simultaneously remove the Packers from the playoffs, that Jeff stays on the bench. That also would be your league championship game. And that basically means in your league championship, you now have given you someone who's more than likely giving you 20 plus points. And McLaurin, Hop, and Palmer ain't doing that. Pittman ain't doing that. And so you made a great decision. Your running back room is stacked. Clearly, you have just destroyed some people in your league when trades, or they don't know what they're doing, and you have dominated. Because to get Kelsey, you built yourself a very, very good team. I'm assuming that you had, I don't know, about the 60th pick, and Kelsey fell to you around 6.
Probably 6 or 7 would be.
Yeah, that's my guess there. It's a great lineup. And then I guess you took CD in the third round or Allen in the third round. Either way, you got some really good value there, and your team's going to keep on rolling. And let me put it this way: if you were 1-5, I'd be more skeptical. But at 5-1, that's no doubt trade. That's absolutely great there, Celtics.
Yeah, and Jefferson, I mean, when he comes back, like we said, we think he's going to play. We think he's going to come back, and when he does, you're going to be cooking it. And so your team has a good, I mean, let's face it. If Josh Allen stays healthy, I mean, I know there's that injury concern that came up recently, but Walker has a really good schedule. Brees looks electric again. Kelsey is solid. I mean, even more solid than he looked like earlier in the season.
And they're going to have to lean on Swift.
And then CD's producing, Keenan Allen's producing, McLaurin in a PPR is also doing pretty well as well. Just looking up the numbers on Pittman, 40 for 406 and 1. And then, you go to what McLaurin has. McLaurin's in the 300s with 30-ish receptions and a touchdown as well. So those numbers are not too far off from one another, and you're getting an electric player back. I like it. And speaking of Minnesota, so thanks for the question, Aman. Speaking of Minnesota, one of the things about the Vikings that we were talking about in the offseason is the defense and how it wasn't their best quality. Joe, do you still see that now? Because I know that they scored a defensive touchdown last week with Jordan Hicks. Do you still see the Vikings as owners of one of the worst defenses in that division or in football, or does it look better? But before we do that, let's get to RGQ here. Is Zach Evans going to be in a running back by committee, or will he take the majority of the snaps? Anyone know? From what I've heard, Zach, and this is just from the sources that you could find on Twitter or X as it is now, Zach Evans was projected today by McVay to be the starter going into that game, that he was going to start that game and they were going to give him plenty of opportunities. Now, with all the nonsense that they did this week with Darrell Henderson on the practice squad, Royce Freeman to the active roster, and Myles Gaskin to the active roster, we know who these players are. We know what Myles Gaskin offers. We know what Royce Freeman offers. We've been here before. The Rams have been here before. I believe that these players have, at one point in time, traveled their way along the West Coast as they did the East Coast. We know who these players are, and we know that they don't offer much.
No.
So
none of them will be starting in 3 weeks.
I am willing.
So don't blow your load to go get them with your fantasy, with your waiver money.
Zach Evans here, and post your roster too, because we could take a look at that. I'm willing to take the chance on Zach Evans at least this week, possibly next week and the week after.
As soon as Kyrie's healthy, he'll be an irrelevant.
Because correct me if I'm incorrect here, but the Rams face the Steelers this week, correct?
That's right.
And the Steelers' run defense is, despite it having the best pass rusher, is not very good.
No, it's pretty mid actually. It's not actually bad. It's just mid. There is no good run defense in the league anymore.
Yeah. So Zach Evans has a good chance to pop off. And the Steelers' pass defense isn't fantastic to a degree as well either. So you have a good chance here of getting some red zone carries as well with Zach Evans. And I wouldn't bring in Royce Freeman in the red zone. I wouldn't bring Myles Gaskin in the red zone. I'd play Zach Evans in the red zone in a Kyren Williams type role. Like Joe said, Kyren Williams, when he's back, he's back. He's the guy. They know that. We know that. But for this interim, if you want him, I think he's going to get targets, and that's just based off of what we know about these other players from their past experiences in the NFL.
And on that note, when we're just talking about that Rams-Steelers game, Cooper Kupp's going to be the highest scoring player in that game.
It's going to be gross.
He's going to do the same thing that Collins did against the Steelers, who put up like $150 on 8 catches. Cooper Kupp's a better player than that. Stafford's a better quarterback. Kupp has a chance of putting up a 40-point game against the Steelers. And I think that there's a very good chance of that. If you're doing a IDP, Kupp is probably worth the check this week. But Bob, to revert back to your question about the Minnesota Vikings.
Thanks for the question, RGQ.
At the end of the day, the Vikings defense is in the middle third in terms of points allowed per game. So they're not horrendous. They're certainly not a glowing strength either. When we looked at the best defense in the league in terms of how many points are they allowing,
Browns.
It's Buffalo has allowed 14.8. Kansas City has allowed 14.4, and San Francisco has allowed 14.5. And then we look at the worst one, Denver, by a mile, actually. Letting up 70 doesn't help. And then Carolina's let up 31, 29 for Chicago. We look at this overall and say, hey, there's a lot of defenses letting up 4 touchdowns or more per game. Let's line up against them. Washington, Denver, Chicago, Carolina, and then 2 are at 27. That would be your New York Football Giants and Arizona. So those are the teams you really want to target against. Question came up here, Bob.
We got a question from Dylan. Pick one, Stafford or Howe. I'm going Stafford this week.
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt about it. Stafford against the Steelers. CJ Stroud looked good against everybody's looked good against the Steelers. Brock Purdy's looked electric during the against the Steelers too. I think that this is a no-brainer. Matt Stafford, he's the better player, better quarterback on a better team.
Situation. Yeah, he might get sacked more, but that's fine.
And in terms of the defense, I go Rams against the Steelers. I have to play Kenny Pickett this week because I have a bye-week quarterback in a 2-quarterback league, and I'm not too thrilled about it. The Rams have a surprisingly decent enough defense. I think there's a trap between the Seahawks and Arizona because Arizona can move the ball to a degree and can score. And I don't know in terms of the Packers and Denver feels like a trap every single week. And I'm not sure the Packers defense is as good as Kansas City's defense. So I don't think you can use that metric of what Kansas City's defense did to them last time as the metric. But if I were to rank these in order of who I would pick, I would go Rams, Packers, Seahawks. The Rams and the Packers, it's close. It's close, but I like the Rams defense a bit better.
So when we go through the math of it, it's the Rams by pretty much a country mile. It's not close. The Pittsburgh Steelers is in the bottom thirds of points for. The Rams are about 500 in points allowed. You're not. So I'm mostly going off of points against when we're talking about defense, because when we look at the category of sacks, while Seattle has the ability to throw a lot up and Dobbs can do it, that's going to be a differentiator. In terms of points allowed, the Rams will allow less points than the other two. But Seattle could make up the ground in sacks. That's kind of hit or miss with Dobbs. Dobbs is a
It
little
depends
bit
on.
mobile.
So
I still think I'd lean the Rams though by a lot. It really
depends on your scoring. And we'll get to your. I have something to say about that RGQ. Yes, Dylan. It really depends on your defense scoring. To be honest with you, because some leagues don't count sacks. Some leagues do. Some leagues only go total points, and some leagues don't. So if yours is a league that is purely based off of total points scored, it's the Rams by a mile. If it's with sacks and interceptions and you get points for all this
Seattle
other
comes
stuff,
to play a lot because Arizona does more turnovers than the Steelers.
You know, it would be close, but if it's just yardage, it's Rams for me, and it's the Rams for Joe. So RGQ, Craig Reynolds is not the play this week. I own Craig Reynolds in my Yahoo League in my 12-teamer. As a guy I picked up just in case injuries were to happen, and all reports are saying that Craig Reynolds is also banged up this week as well.
It's gonna be Gibbs, dude.
And so it feels like Gibbs is going to get the chance this week, and he'll probably give that chance away once Monty comes back.
Whoa. As a proud Gibbs owner, like I said, I've been waiting for this week, and I think this might be the week he takes it and keeps it. In terms of who's getting the ball in Detroit, it's gonna be Gibbs. It's gonna be Gibbs, Laporta, and Amah. But it's gonna be Gibbs. So I wouldn't try to be getting a Craig Reynolds territory. Because here's the thing with Detroit. They use Reynolds as a tease in so many different ways. And the reality is when you bite on it, you never like the results. Whether you be a real life NFL defense or a fantasy owner, just ignore Reynolds and your life is better.
Well, so Craig Reynolds, I don't know if anybody saw that TikTok, but Craig Reynolds, he's the coach's guy. The coaches love him. He does a lot of intangible things and a lot of actual things on the field that make this football team a better team. But that does not equate to fantasy numbers. So for me, he's a non-start.
Gibbs is returning from an injury. That is correct. But Gibbs is the most talented of the ones available. And given all else equal in terms of their injury status, Gibbs is the one who's getting it without a doubt.
So I want to say something about the Lions too, about that in a moment, but I do want to say Curtis Samuel is a great stand-in for CD this week. Curtis Samuel has been getting targets. He's been catching basically everything that comes his way. He's got 2 touchdowns, and he faces the Giants defense. I know the Bills didn't look good. Joe predicted that game would not be as good as it should.
One of the winners last week, baby.
But the Giants are bad. They're the worst defense, worst team, worst everything in the league.
They're bad.
And Curtis Samuel has the chance to really turn up against Sam Howell. With that said, we still do like Stafford more than Sam Howell, but I do think at least that Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin are going to put up good games, but I think Stafford will put up a better game than Sam Howell. And when it comes to Gibbs and the Lions, I mean, these injuries that we're seeing is that Craig Reynolds. So Craig Reynolds has been dealing with a hamstring or toe injury happening here. Mm-hmm. And Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, and Brian Branch were all limited, but they have been said that they are going to come back and that they're going to play. And so if Gibbs is playing, Gibbs is the play over Reynolds. If Gibbs is not playing, maybe you put in Reynolds, but I would say that, everything's pointing, Fantasy Pros, CBS, Sportsbook Nation, everybody's reporting that Gibbs is trending in the right direction. Mm-hmm. So for me, Craig Reynolds is a no play. Zach Evans is the play for me this week. And if you don't like Zach Evans, you could put in Palmer. But Palmer, didn't really do much of anything to be like super excited about this past week.
And here's another emphasis on why to go Diggs. When you look at the league in terms of its tiers of offenses and points per game and defenses and points allowed, there are only two teams that are in the top tier of both the offense and the defense. That is the Niners and that is the Bills. However, the next closest team to being in top tier in both of those categories is Detroit, which means that they're going to have plenty of opportunities to run the ball and go Gibbs hard. I understand the concern about bringing him back off an injury. That is not really ever been a concern of the Lions, though. They go hard in running the ball, especially when it's close to the goal line there. I really think Gibbs is going to take this league and take this job. And even when Monty comes back healthy, it ain't going back to him. And I think this is Gibbs' time to shine. Admittedly, I've been driving the Gibbs bus since he's been drafted, and I love him. I'm in the Gibbs.
RGQ too, as well, is that one of the reasons why I might not play Palmer this week is that those divisional matchups in the AFC West tend to be really they're really hard to predict what's going to happen in those games. So while Palmer does have a higher floor of potentially 8 to 10 points in a PPR league, like 4 receptions, 40 yards, 4 receptions, 60 yards, something like what he had last week. You look at it and you say, okay, well, they're playing the Chiefs, and that game always tends to be a little bit. It's hard. It's a tough game. The stars shine in those games. This is probably going to be. They're going to be throwing to Kelsey a lot. For the Chargers, they're going to get Austin Eckler involved a lot more. They're going to be passing it to Keenan Allen. Palmer is going to play a role, but I definitely think that Zach Evans has a good potential against a really bad team. Now, who's the better player? Maybe Palmer, right? Out of Palmer and Zach Evans. So you've just kind of got to make the decision: is that do you want to play the bad matchup of the Steelers, or do you want to go with that higher floor, lower ceiling type of guy?
Well, one of the things that I want to point out with the Kansas City San Diego game, or Chargers game rather, is that by all market metrics of the betting market, that game is not going to be as high scoring as the public thinks it's going to be. And as a result, having essentially the number 4 option for red zone in a lower scoring game, really, to me, I'd rather roll the dice, because I think Bob is overemphasizing the high floor of Palmer. I think when push comes to shove, they're going to take their new little Eckler car out to drive, and Palmer could be left in the dust. And I think that there's a chance that Palmer's only going to get you 4 catches, and at that, like 23 yards. I think there's a very good chance that Palmer's a bust this week.
8 isn't really a high floor. It's just a floor that, it's a decently high floor, but, like RGQ is saying, these games tend to be, 30, 27, something like that. But I just think in games like this, if we just go back to the last game, 2022, so November 2022, and we look at Josh Palmer caught a 50-yard touchdown pass in that game. Josh Palmer caught a 6-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah, but in that game, neither Keenan or Williams played.
And that was that was a game where you're looking at and you're saying, well, who's playing? Keenan Allen did play. He had 5 receptions for 94 yards. And so for me, though, I think
The one he
that
got hurt in then?
no, Keenan Allen didn't get hurt in that game. Mike Williams got hurt in that game.
There you go.
So this is something where like it's worth monitoring depending on what the game script is. But I know 100% certainty that the Rams are going to have plenty of opportunities against the Steelers defense. Yeah. We know this with 100% certainty. It could be that the Chargers might hold that ball, or Kansas City might decide to run Pacheco into the ground, and it be 10 minutes later, and Justin Herbert hasn't seen the field, and Justin Herbert's also dealing with that finger injury, and so I'm tending to lean to Zach Evans, even if it ends up being a slight running back by committee, because the Steelers are very mid, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities. Kenny Pickett turns the ball over a lot. And the Steelers' run game isn't very good. And so they can't get into a rhythm. I think Zach Evans is the play there based off of everything there. So, Amon, if Josh Allen then ends up not playing, who would be a good way? I hope he plays. I hope he plays for the safety of my Yahoo team. I was deciding between Love, Stafford, Wilson, and Howe. I go in this order.
Are we talking this week or long run?
This week.
Okay.
This week, I am doing Stafford, Howe, Love, Wilson in that order. Stafford, Howe, Love, Wilson, and like I said earlier about Stafford, I might be overplaying how bad the Steelers defense is, but the Rams offense is light years better than what I thought it was going to be heading into this season. You can go back and look at any of our videos about the Rams. We thought they were going to be really trash.
That was greatly impressive.
We thought they were going to be really bad, and they're impressing us over and over and over again.
So I have a different answer here, because both the Steelers and the Packers are coming off of their byes. They tend not to get destroyed as much as that. The Denver defense is the worst unit in the NFL, and it's not even close in terms of yardage allowed and points allowed. And if you can give me a LaFleur offense after a bye going against the Denver, dude, I can't pass that up. If we're talking just this week only, whoever is playing Denver, play them all. And that's
what I thought. Answer. I thought that was safe against Kansas City, and that was not the case.
Well, the Denver can't do nothing. I mean, Denver can't get off the field. They let up big plays. And again, LaFleur with a bye, Watson finally is coming back. That Green Bay team, I think, is going to drop a bucket or two.
So we'll get to Hunter in a minute, but RGQ, to your question here, just pulling up a quick scouting report from the draft. People have said that he's a physical, aggressive runner, and he's not fearful of contact, good balance, good mobility, good acceleration, doesn't move well laterally or cutting in space, and doesn't have long speed. So he's not going to hit a home run. That's why I'm saying if the Rams get into the red zone and they decide not to pass it to Cooper Kupp, then this is a really good space for Zach Evans because he's physical. And physical running backs on the line of scrimmage at the goal line or within 5 yards is a great opportunity. So if this he doesn't catch the ball a lot, so that's probably where your Myles Gaskin, Royce Freeman comes in this game. But as a pure physical runner, you're probably gonna like Zach Evans. And the scouting report says from his college days that he does chip in on pass protection. So on passing downs, which the Rams like to do, he's going to be in the game. Because I've never known Royce Freeman or Myles Gaskin to be that great in pass protection that they
and the one edge the Steelers do have is that pass rush, and they're going to need someone in to protect them. So it doesn't mean he's going to have a productive game, but he's going to be on the field. He's going to get a chance for that. And to answer your question, I don't watch film on the college. I watch film of the pros once they're here. Once he starts getting his snaps, we can go there. Unfortunately, NFL does not allow the all-22 film for the preseason. So I have not broken down his film in that regard. So Hunter, Ridley or Addison, Bob? Who are you thinking? Ridley's on Thursday night. So coming off that London layover. And by the way, I gotta tell you this right now. I was wrong last week. I thought Jacksonville was going to get blown out due to time, body clock, and all that fun stuff. That did not come to pass. I do think there's going to be a remnant effect of it tonight, though. But
Hunter, the one thing that worries me, and I just sold my stock in Trevor Lawrence because I'm in our 8-team league. I've had some really bad luck. My record isn't as good as I wanted it to be. I've had a lot of injuries, a lot of bad luck in terms of matchups. My team is one of the higher scoring teams in our league, but I'm also going against teams that score out the butt every single week too. Trevor Lawrence is expected to start tonight.
Yeah, he is. That's not the issue.
He's expected to start. I'm not sure if this is going to be a game where they lean on the pass, to be honest with you.
Well, you can't run on New Orleans.
You can't. You're welcome, RGQ. New Orleans has a really, really good rush defense.
Yeah, they do.
But I'm not quite sure that Trevor is going to be his Trevor self with a knee issue. So it's going to be, for me, I'm staying, other than ETN, who is like an all-time, you have to start ETN every week. I'm not so sure I want any part of the passing game. All of these games with New Orleans have been decently low scoring. And
you just need an offense.
You know, just looking at New Orleans, I'm just going to pull up New Orleans, their schedule so far of the games that they came in with here. So we're looking at the past.
New Orleans only let up 16 a game.
Yeah. So we're looking at the Texans scored 20, Patriots 0, Buccaneers 26, Packers 18, Panthers 17, Titans 15. And you know, when we look at what the Buccaneers did against the Saints, Baker Mayfield threw for 3 touchdowns, and they all went to, you know, one to Devin Tompkins, one to Cade Otton, and one to Trey Palmer. So it didn't even go to Godwin.
Yeah, he's not throwing the ball downfield very much.
So this could be an Ingram game where there's a lot of releases into, you know, that mid zone where those linebackers are, because these linebackers are pretty decent. He might get over the top. There could be a lot of swing passes or whatnot to ETN. Try to get ETN out in the flat. This could be a good Kirk game, but I'm not sold on Calvin Ridley in this game. Joe, if you have anything more to say about that,
I absolutely do. So first off, we give away our bets every week. One of the ones this week is Minnesota taking the points. This Minnesota team is one of the few teams that actually is designed to give the Niners trouble. The Niners cannot handle a vertical passing game against them. And as long as your team, being your offense, is willing to let your quarterback get hit, you can exploit them. No one allows their quarterback to be hit more than the Minnesota Vikings line Kirk Cousins get lit up. And as a result, I believe Addison is going to be the beneficiary of this. They actually will attack the ball downfield. They're going to score many more points than the Jaguars as a total team. And I'm riding Addison for a Monday Night Miracle. And I think that that's the right play. Obviously, the Niners defense is amazing. No one is fighting that. But if you're going to beat the Niners, which no one, with the exception of the weather in Cleveland, but no one has truly done this, is to attack them. And unless you attack them over the top, you're not going to beat them. And I really think that that's what's going to happen is Minnesota's going to attack them. They're going to get a shootout with Brock Purdy, and we're going to find out that he can't win. I'm calling the Niners lose 2 in a row.
Here's the other thing about Addison Hunter is that, you know, Joe was not sold on Amari Cooper last week. Amari came in, got 4 receptions.
Never sold on Amari Cooper.
You go back, the Cowboys game was a disgrace, but CD still got 4 for 49. The Arizona Cardinals, Michael Wilson, right? You know, comes in, Marquise Brown, they both almost eclipsed 100 yards. The Giants sucked, so we don't need to talk about them.
But the Arizona is a great point. They attack the ball downfield on them. And that's what you do. And Minnesota's much better than Arizona at that.
And the Rams, Puka had 147, Tutu had 77. And the Steelers, Allen Robinson Robinson, let me say that again. Allen Robinson had 64 yards, and Kelvin Austin had 37 yards. So this pass defense is the weakest part of the 49ers defense as a
Especially if you
totality.
attack it laterally, which
You
the
got it.
Vikings don't
You
do.
got to attack it over the top. Addison can do that. Kirk Cousins can do that. I am playing Addison. I would rather leave Ridley on my bench and complain about him if he did well, knowing that I had a chance on Monday night with Addison, rather than lose my chance early with Calvin Ridley. That's how I feel about Thursday.
And the other thing is, Ridley is not going to give you volume to go off. He might catch a big one and break it. He's always capable of that. It's not really his game, though. You're much more likely to get Addison to give you volume over the top. So,
yeah, RGQ. I wish you the best of luck, because that's how I feel every single week. Like I was just saying, in our 8-team league, I was the third highest scoring point in the league. I would have beat 5 other teams. I happened to play one of the other teams that scored higher than me. It wasn't Joe's team, but
it wasn't week 1.
It wasn't week 1, but I have played almost every single week the highest scoring team in the league, which is killing me because my team is stacked. But it's got issues at tight end, and I knew that going into the season. But I mean, when it comes to New Orleans here, Joe, I just want to talk about New Orleans for a moment and give some information here.
Sure.
You know,
as you're pulling out, New Orleans is one of the teams that is in the bottom 40% of points scored, but the upper 40% of points allowed. And that's why we're projecting them to be right around 9 or 10 wins.
So
started the year with them projected the 3rd most wins in the league, by the way. They have sacrificed a great schedule.
When we go to running backs that they've faced this year, okay, these are the running backs that they've faced. Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears, Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, A.J. Dillon, Patrick Taylor, Emmanuel Wilson, Rashad White, Keyshawn Vaughn, Zeke, Ramondre, Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce, Mike Boone. None of those players, outside of maybe Derrick Henry last year, strike fear into an opponent. Etienne
Singletary Stevenson should be, but yeah.
Etienne is different than all the backs on that list. Etienne is very good he has good hands. He does rush the ball really well. And this game is probably going to be on the lower scoring side. And so what does that mean? Ball control, ball possession. You don't want to get Trevor Lawrence sacked. You don't want to get Trevor Lawrence injured. So what are you going to do? You're going to run the ball, and you're going to run the ball as many times as you possibly can. I project Calvin Ridley to probably go for like 4 for 65, something like that, somewhere in there, which isn't terrible, but it doesn't provide you with that boom that Jordan Addison could provide you. So that's where I'm at on that, Hunter. And RGQ, thoughts on Jaylen Warren? We always like talking Jaylen Warren and Najee on the show. Joe and I like Jaylen Warren. We do think the opportunities are going to be there. Harris doesn't look good. Najee doesn't.
He doesn't. But here's the fundamental fact of what the Steelers do. Jaylen Warren might outproduce him. He might outproduce him every single game from now until the end of the year. The Pittsburgh Steelers will never give him more touches than Najee Harris. So it depends upon how you want to define starter. There's a very good chance that Warren is going to outcatch him, out receiving yards him, and maybe even out rushing yards him. But he will never have more touches than Najee Harris. That's part of Tomlin. It's part of the Steelers' way. So for fantasy, Warren might be a better start. But when it comes time to kickoff and who's going out for the first offensive play, it's going to be 22.
And it sucks. It sucks for Steelers fans.
Well, the reason behind that is this. Warren is a little guy who would break if you gave him the same load as Najee Harris. And Najee Harris, while he's built like a tractor, is just not running through people. He's actually one of the worst in terms of contacting down.
That's what
but he's not going to break. And the Steelers are still so petrified of losing their running backs after the whole Connor experience, getting hurt, getting hurt in the first quarter, and then not having an offense for the rest of that game plan.
So
There's some things that have scarred Tomlin. That is one of them.
The thing,
that is why Najee Harris will always get more touches than him. And unless you actually follow the Steelers, you'll never know that. But that's a fact.
RGQ for this one. Before the bye, if you're in a PPR league, you know what you are, before the bye, not Jaylen Warren in week 4 and 5, 11.5, 10. In week 3, 8.2. Week 2, 12.6. Okay.
No, so, Warren's the better fantasy player. I ain't playing it. He might even be the better football player, but that ain't what Tomlin's going to do.
I know, but I'm saying that's almost flex. That's almost
no. They will never split carries.
No. Yeah.
To answer your question, sorry, RQ. I just went to your question. They aren't going to split carries because the entire reason we're keeping Najee around is so he can take the brunt of the hits. And then when the defense is tired out, Warren is faster and can just zig and zag. They also have an idiot of an offensive coordinator who doesn't know how to drop a running plan, but that's a side story. Long story short, avoid the Steelers' running game, guys.
Well, here's the thing, too, Joe. In terms of should you drop Warren for Spears, I don't think so.
We got questions on this one. Okay, yeah.
And I just want to make this clear on why Spears is doing well. Mm-hmm. If you look and you look at like what he's facing and the amount of pressure or boxes that he's facing, it's much different than Derrick Henry. And you look at what is happening with the Steelers and Jaylen Warren is that, yes, Jaylen Warren is used as an appropriate change of pace back. He's used out of the backfield to catch the ball. That's why he's being productive. That's why he's looking good. Now, for Spears, despite all the talk about Spears and the downfall of Henry, Spears has only had one game over 10 points.
Yeah, he's mostly being used as the receiving changeup.
Week 5. Well, no, he's used as a receiver, but his rushes, he looks much better and much more electric because he doesn't have that same type of box that Derrick Henry is running under because Tennessee has said, and it shows every single time, if Derrick Henry's on the field, we are running the ball. If Derrick Henry's on the field, we are throwing a short pass. If Derrick Henry's this, we are coming after Derrick Henry. Everybody has known this for the last 2 years, 3 years even. Now,
Hopkins was supposed to fix it, just didn't happen.
Derrick Henry hasn't been producing as much because the O-line hasn't improved that much, and Derrick Henry has gotten older.
That O-line, Tennessee's O-line is in the 30s. I mean, it's a bad O-line.
They were there last year. It hasn't
improved
much from last year, right? So when I say this is that the way that Spears has come about his points and carries is, I mean, against Baltimore, Derrick Henry did decently well in that game. You know, he scored 17 or 18 fantasy points. He broke off a 60-yard run. Without that 60-yard touchdown run, he would have not been that great. But in that same game, Spears went 4 for 15. Caught one pass for 48 yards. In the previous game, 7 for 34, 5 for 40, 8 for 49. 3
those are good averages, though. Those are going to add up over time. Here's the reason. So I'm not sure.
Hold on, Joe. Let me finish here. They're going to add up over time, but this team is not a good team.
No.
And so what I want to get across is that at this point in time, Jaylen Warren is a better play as a potential flex play than I think Spears. In the long term, I think Spears could eventually carve out a bigger role depending on what quarterback comes in after this bye week. If it's Will Levis, or if they decide to continue to go with Malik Willis, or if they go out and get somebody else from the waivers.
It has to be Levis. They have to.
There's a good chance that with a capable enough quarterback that Tajay Spears could turn into a really, really great player for the Titans. Derrick Henry is probably going to get traded at some point in time.
That's the thing I wanted to get to here, Bob.
So for the next 3 weeks, I keep Warren because he's already had his bye. Spears has his bye this week. Then he plays Atlanta and the Steelers. Then they go to Tampa. Then Spears goes to Tampa, Jacksonville, Carolina. Carolina sucks as a run defense. Tampa Bay is okay. Indy is okay. And as we know, the Steelers aren't that great anyway. So there's a point in time where I do make that change. This week, though, I don't think I do.
Well, see, it all comes down to do you need Warren? So here's my answer. When you look at the NFL overall as a whole, there are very few positions that can do an in-season trade and be effective. Running back is one of those few that you can move from team to team in season and be effective at your next stop. We saw it with McCaffrey as an example last year. I do believe that Tennessee has finally realized, because every single metric points it out, they are a 5 to 7 win team. That obviously is not making the playoffs, and that's with Henry. So if you're not going to be winning anything with Henry, get something in return for him and let Spears take off. I believe Levitz has to be the direction they go because Malik Willis isn't. So therefore, let the future be now in all capacities. And once you make that turn to going all into Levis, it totally is justified in moving Henry. And if you can have a starting NFL running back in this conversation, that's the answer. Although you might also be able to get away with one of your players is designated as out entering this week. You throw them on your IR spot, you can pick up Spears anyway, as that's always one of the great plays I love doing. Bambo, what's up?
We have Randy and Bo here. Let's get to Randy and Bo's question. So,
I clicked Bo. We're starting with Randy.
Randy, I give Gibbs, Zay Flowers, Goddard, Roschon. I get Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. It's a 12-team PPR. I have Brees, Chuba, Ford, Waddle, Amon-Ra, Devonta Smith, Palmer. I say...
Who's your other tight end? No, you're getting Hawkinson. Yeah, the answer is if you're getting the Hawk, do it.
I say no, Joe. I say no.
Why?
I think in terms of... You're welcome, RGQ. I think for a couple of reasons. Zay Flowers has looked really good. He's getting a heck of a lot of targets.
He is.
And those targets finally turned into a touchdown this past week. And the Ravens have seen him as a deep threat. They've seen him as a guy that can carry them to a victory. We know Gibbs could be electric. And okay, so all right, there's a clarification there. My wide receivers are Chase, Amon-Ra, Ayuk, DK Watson.
Okay. You put Hawkinson on that team.
No, well, that's Bam's. He was just correcting something.
Sorry.
Back to Randy here. You have Brees, Chuba, and Ford, Waddle, Amon-Ra, and Devonta Smith. I would try to get Hawkinson without giving up Zay Flowers, to be honest with you. I really like Zay's. I can start 2 wide receiver, 2 running backs, and flex. Zay Flowers doesn't start for me. Okay, then. If Zay doesn't start for you and you're starting Waddle and Amon-Ra, I'd do it.
Absolutely. I mean, he's playing Waddle or Raw. His flex is going to be Devontae. He's on a little bit of a tight spot giving up Gibbs, but Aaron Jones, Randy, to me, do that. If you get someone to say yes to that, do that all day.
Yeah, Randy, if you were starting Flowers, then my answer of no would be there. But if you're not starting Flowers on a week-to-week basis and he's just sitting on your bench and giving you tough lineup decisions all the time, Hawkinson immediately slides into your lineup.
Hawkinson's also the number one option.
He's going to be very valuable going forward with Justin Jefferson out. Aaron Jones coming back from a hamstring. Maybe he tweaks it, maybe he doesn't. But when he doesn't, he's a star. And so Goddard, he's being mildly productive in his Goddard way. But if Zay's not starting for you, I do the trade to get Hawkinson and Jones because Jones will be starting for you. Hawkinson will be starting for you. And I think
Jones and Mr. Gibbs are about the same. Jones and Gibbs are about the same. So you're not getting a tremendous
hope
step
that
down there.
helped,
you're basically getting rookie risk for known asset. And I still do believe, and I know it's getting late in the year and it's getting there. I still think Aaron Jones leaving that team in touchdowns when it's all said and done.
So Bam says, I was just offered Kelsey and Godwin for my Amon-Ra and Christian Watson and Pitts. Do I accept?
Ooh.
My wide receivers are Chase, Amon-Ra, Ayuk, DK, and Watson. I love Amon-Ra, and I think that Randy will agree that Amon-Ra is a fantastic wide receiver. He has tremendous upside, but your team has a you're giving up two pieces to get back Godwin, who, in and of itself, Godwin has not been playing terribly. He's been having a couple 100-yard games here and there.
Mm-hmm.
I going into the season, I didn't like Godwin because we weren't sure about Baker Mayfield.
He's not going to start Godwin. To me, this just basically
Right.
comes down to
But
he's
this is,
upgrading from Pitts to Kelsey. Do it.
Kelsey, or do I want Amon-Ra? Do I want Amon-Ra and Pitts, or do I want Kelsey? And I want Kelsey.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's no doubt.
I do the trade.
Yes.
I do the trade, Dan,
Kelsey.
because Godwin in a PPR league is still fantastic if you decide that you need to start him. You have Jamar. You have Ayuk, who is probably starting for you too. Watson has really good long-term potential. I would try to not trade away Godwin, or not try to trade away Watson, but I know you have to include him in the trade. I definitely want Kelsey on my team, and if I can give up Pitts as in that deal to do that, I would definitely do that. And I'm getting Godwin back. Godwin has been productive, so I do that.
And Randy, I want to hit on something you said here, because this does get in the way with people with trades. I get that you drafted him 8th overall. Totally cool. The simple fact is, when we're here in the middle of the season, you cannot have what you did in the past interfering with what your future is. Ahmad is what he is at this point. If we did a redraft today, would he go 8th overall? Probably not. But also, J. Jeff's not going 1st overall. So you got to just deal with, okay, that happened. We're now a month and a half later. What can we do moving forward? I get that you're emotionally invested. He was your 1st-round pick, but you got to let it go.
Well, that's Randy's.
Do what's best, and Kelsey's better.
No, yeah. I mean, to be honest, Randy, there is a lot.
Oh, you should love him. I'm not fighting your love.
There's a lot to love about Amon-Ra. And I think Amon-Ra, when we look at the totality of the season, he could probably end up top 5 in the league. I mean, he has a pretty good target share. I mean, he looks great when he's healthy. He's getting, and like you said, his last games are in domes.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at it. He doesn't really have to face a winter. Right?
That's going to be a problem for them in the playoffs, but that's a different
15,
problem. Well,
that will be a problem for him in the playoffs, but week 15 he plays in Denver. Week 12 he plays in Green Bay, and week 11 in Chicago. But we've got the rest of that schedule: New Orleans, Minnesota, Dallas, Minnesota. I mean, I'm looking at this for Randy. I think that your trade. I think if you do the trade, you do get some upside there. And for Bo, I would do the trade too, because Kelsey is the player to own. Yes, you're giving up a lot, but you're getting a lot back in return. And I say both.
Randy, if we're mixing up your trade, can you resend it to us there so we can get this right?
No, we got both. We got both, Randy. Yep.
Okay. So George, welcome back, by the way.
Yeah, Randy.
Pick 2.
Joe, hold on. Randy, we do. Joe was mixing them up a little bit. I like both trades. I think both trades should be done. You have the Hawkinson trade. He has the Kelsey trade.
Yes, I was upgrading both your tight ends. I
think both trades are fine. For Bam, I think he's getting a great asset with Godwin and Kelsey. And for you, because you're not starting Flowers, I think that going out and getting Hawkinson and Jones, those two players will help your team a lot. And with Jones going forward, depending on if he's healthy, I think that will be a fantastic way to end your season, because there's a lot of upside potential there. So, George, question: we've looking at flex, looking at pick 2 here, CMC, Cook, Warren, Roschon, and Zach Evans. I'm going to wait for the injury report to come out about Christian McCaffrey. First of all, he's a no-brainer start if he's healthy. If he's playing and he gets a full complement of whatever his snaps are, he'll be fine. Even if he doesn't, he'll be fine because he's that good. Now, when it comes to Zach Evans, I think Zach Evans is a good start this week against the Steelers. The Steelers don't really have a good rush defense. Warren, I think that if I didn't have Zach Evans, James Cook, or CMC, then I might think about starting him. But with who you're dealing with here, I might not put Warren in there. And Roshan, I'm not sure about the injury. So for me, this comes down to CMC, James Cook, and Zach Evans. So pick 2, 1 for the flex. I would go CMC, Cook, and Evans. If CMC isn't playing, it'd be Cook and Evans for me. If CMC is playing, I would do CMC and Cook.
And we have the same order there. So that's how we go there.
So thanks for the question, George. And chasers, and we'll get to your thoughts there, RGQ and Josh and Triple for sure. At flex, would you all start Ridley or Jahmyr Gibbs in non-PPR? Boy, that's a really tough decision because of what we just said about Ridley. I think this is going to be a game where they don't want to put Trevor's health in jeopardy. And I think that there's going to be a lot of rush in this game, a lot of dink and dunk passes potentially to Evan Ingram. And I don't think Ridley gets necessarily too involved in this game. I think he could top out at 65 yards. So that's a 6 total points. Gibbs, on the other hand, Gibbs could start this whole game. And there's potential with the way that Detroit moves the ball, that Gibbs could get a touchdown in the red zone, maybe 2. I go Gibbs because of the touchdown potential.
Absolutely. There's a very good chance that Jacksonville is one of the lower scoring teams overall tonight. Detroit will not be. Give me much more part of that Detroit offense than Jacksonville's offense, especially with Jacksonville on Thursday Night Football. All right, so RQ.
Let's get to this question, and then Josh's, and then Triples, because I do want to answer all 3 of these here. Thoughts on Wan'Dale
Robinson? Is better for the Giants, by the way.
Yeah, I'm staying away from all Giants players, but
except for Saquon.
Yeah, except for Saquon. But if I have to pick a wide receiver from that room to be productive in the future, Wan'Dale looked good when he was playing last year, and he looks good again this year with Tyrod Taylor. So I think Wan'Dale will have good games, and just because of the way that the Giants play, that there are going to be a lot of games where he's handcuffed by just the way they can move the ball. And I'm not picking up Wan'Dale Robinson, but I'm definitely keeping him on my radar because he can and could be productive in the long term for you. I mean, 22 receptions, 141 yards. You're probably not getting a touchdown out of Wan'Dale Robinson anytime soon. So,
only the Giants are going to touch on anytime soon.
It's capped there for me. But last week, 62 yards, 8 for 8, 5 of 6 for 18 the week before, and 5 of 6 for 40. There's potential there. The targets are there to turn into something, but it's not going to turn into touchdowns. So, Josh, oh, God.
Russ or Carr?
Man, this is a decision Joe and I were talking about way earlier in the season when we were like, what lower tier quarterback are we going to draft? What's going to happen here?
I'm firmly on Team Carr, by the way.
Yeah, Joe is on Team Carr, but knowing that, I do think that this game is going to be a bit of a lower scoring game.
Yeah.
Like not like 6-3 scoring, but definitely not one that's going to be lighting up the scoreboards like that Detroit game was a couple of Thursdays ago. It's just the way that these two teams play football that I think that these are going to be games that the running back is going to be heavily relied on. But that's not to say that the Jaguars do not have a very good pass defense. So
yeah,
if I'm picking which one do I think has the potential to get a couple touchdowns, I think Derek Carr could put together a fairly decent game, 2 touchdowns, maybe 3 touchdowns with maybe like 265, 270 yards. If that excites you, go for it.
Well, it's an either or. So I look at it like this. Denver is playing the Packers coming off a bye with a completely loaded team.
And we'll get to your question, Triple.
And New Orleans is playing a team who's playing the Thursday night game after returning from London after being there for 2 weeks. I do believe had it not been a division game, they would have lost last week. I think there's a chance that you just basically see the team that is tired and worn down just gets worn down more. As Bob said, Jacksonville's pass rush leaves a lot to be desired. And I do believe there's a very good chance Chris Olave makes his appearance saying, hey, I'm still here, guys. And that would all lead to Carr taking this thing over. I'm big time on Carr here.
Yeah,
So Trouble.
And to just end that thought there, Josh,
Mm.
when it comes to, well, how do these are the wide receivers in terms of against the Jaguars? The Bills, the Colts, the Texans, the Chiefs, and I'll just say the Chiefs, the Texans, and the Bills, their wide receivers all collectively went for almost over 200 yards. The only ones that really sucked against the Jaguars was, of course, the Falcons in London. So we expect that to happen. So, well, maybe not in London, but it was
just the Falcons in general ain't passing the ball good to anyone.
Start Flowers or JT at flex for full PPR. Gibbs is not in the question when I'm talking about JT or Flowers.
Yeah, that's.
I love the way and the usage of Zay Flowers. I absolutely love the way that the Ravens are using him, and it's making Lamar look like a really, really, really fantastic passer. And that pains Joe because Joe is also a Steelers fan, and so we know we don't want.
I've seen enough Lamar tape to know he's not a good passer.
We don't want the Ravens to do statistically good because just as fans of the Steelers, we want that. But just looking at this, you go into the last couple of games that have been played. Zay Flowers, six receptions on 8 targets, 5 receptions on 11 targets, 3 for 4 against Cleveland. That's an aberration. 8 for 10 against Indy, 4 or 5 against Cincy, 9 to 10 in the season opener against the Texans. He is quietly inching his way to getting 100 yards and a touchdown. Now, JT, on the other hand,
playing
Cleveland, this game against Cleveland is going to be disgusting because Cleveland has one of the better defenses in the league, surprisingly enough, as the league has gone.
They also just acted like they won the Super Bowl in the rain last week.
They defeated San Francisco last week, which nobody saw coming. When we look at what has happened with the running backs that have come through, well, we still have Zach Moss. Zach Moss is still in the discussion. Now, Zach Moss is at this point where JT's carries are probably going to rise above Zach Moss's. But if JT looks like he's getting punished a lot by the Browns, there's a very realistic chance that he doesn't get a full complement of snaps this week because they want to save him. They just paid him all this money. So why not throw Zach Moss out there as hey, maybe I could, this isn't a statistics thing. This is just this is the way people think thing is if I just paid JT a bunch of money, do I want to keep Zach Moss on my roster knowing how well he did? Or could I get something for him at the trade line? What can I do? This could be another Showtime piece for Zach Moss because he's quietly, not so quietly, putting together a very, very good season. And there's teams like, the Vikings that could use a running back like that.
Well, if you're another team shopping for running back, would you rather have Moss or Henry?
I would rather have Henry, but Henry's going to cost me more. But
that's the thing.
Triple for your question, I start Flowers because...
And I start JT.
Just because I think that in a full PPR league, Flowers is going to do really well for you. I'm not really sure what this JT situation is going to look like this week. JT could very well get like 3 touchdowns this week and totally surprise us.
I don't think that would be a surprise. They paid him. They're going to use him. And as much as people are saying that Cleveland's defense is fixed,
we'll get to that.
Run CMC did not get hurt in that game and it wasn't a monsoon, they would have been run all over. You look at the running backs that Cleveland has played, none of them, again, the exception of the hurt Run CMC, have been elite. We're talking about Mixon, Harris.
Right.
There's not a lot of talent that Cleveland's had to stop on the ground. Taylor, I think, is going to carve them apart in a game but neither one of them is going to separate so far that the run will come out of play.
Yeah.
And there is always the possibility that Lamar Jackson wakes up and has to start dealing with Odell Beckham bitching, and that could just take Flowers out of the game.
Did you almost call him Odell Bitchum? Because that was
I almost did.
But the reason now, RGQ will get to that, and Agent will get to that too. Detroit has a really good defense. And for Baltimore to stay in that game against Detroit, they're going to have to throw the ball. And that's one of the reasons why I really love Zay Flowers in that game. I really think
it's for the Colts to win their game. They really got to run the ball.
They're going to have.
I just think that overall, JT is going to give you more success than Flowers.
These teams are going to have way different scripts. And Joe's on JT. I'm on Flowers. I think both are really good plays this week. I'm wondering what the rest of your lineup looks like because I would want to start both of these guys. But, that's the way.
Well, for flex, he can't. So.
Right, I know.
Waller. You got Waller. You traded Addison for Pitts. Starting to think that I lost that trade. Any tight ends that you would trade Waller and a piece for? Well, obviously Hawkinson and Laporta come to mind immediately because you're not going to get Kelsey for that. But getting rid of Pitts, I don't think is a problem either.
Yeah, Hawkinson. You could go out and get a guy. You could go out and get Hawkinson. You could go out and get Mark Andrews. If you really like Mark Andrews, it's to say like, what's that team really going to look like here? With the way your team looks, though, if it were me, I would try to pair Waller and Warren to maybe upgrade that tight end position because Warren is that upgrade that somebody will need at a flex position most times. If you want to go in and sell Monty, you could probably, but you could. I wouldn't, but you could sell Monty and Waller and maybe go after a guy like Hawkinson. But right now, what I'm looking at from your team, you might consider Dell. You might consider Warren as a piece to upgrade with Waller to go after and get a tight end. You could also look the waiver wire. There's probably not that much left. So I would try to scoop up Hawkinson, maybe go after Laporta. But definitely Hawkinson because Laporta with JMO there, the targets might be a little bit weird for a little bit. So Hawkinson would be my trade target there. Agent,
I don't think it's going to be weird. I think still be Laporta.
Would you play Michael Thomas or Drake London in a PPR league? This week, with what we just said about the Saints, I think that I love Drake London. Drake London has been on fire. But I think Michael Thomas is my play this week.
I agree that Michael Thomas is going to give you more volume overall for your PPR, and we're not actually sure that Atlanta can consistently pass the ball.
Yeah,
so
I think Michael Thomas is my play. With everything I said about this game tonight, I think it is going to be a low-scoring game. But I think that the Saints will get in the red zone. Jaguars don't have a good pass rush. They don't have a good pass defense. I think that Thomas is the play tonight.
Thomas might also win this game by death by a million.
I would also be rolling out Rashid Shaheed if I had him as well. But like I said, I would stay away from Calvin Ridley. ETN or Mostert PPR. Who's Miami playing this week? I haven't looked at that.
Philly.
Game yet.
Sunday Night Football at Philly.
I play ETN. I know Mostert has been hot, but like I said, I think that they're going to have to rely on ETN this week. ETN has also put up 2 weeks this year, 2 touchdowns, 80 yards, almost eclipsing the 100-yard mark. That's a really tough decision. Honestly, who are your other running backs that you're making this decision, Tucker, with ETN and Mostert? Because I would want to start both. But
it would probably ETN. Someone who's a top 4 stud.
I would start ETN over Mostert this week for me.
Okay, Josh.
Do you like this trade? I just
Downs
20-man
Jono for Jacobs.
20-man PPR.
Jacoby Myers. You also have Komet and Shaheed for Mark. I would rather keep Komet over Mark Andrews, and I would rather have of that combination grouping. I would rather have Myers in part 1, and then Komet and Shaheed in part 2.
I agree with that. I would rather have Myers and Komet and Shaheed. Although I do like Mark Andrews, Shaheed has looked really good, and Shaheed's putting up more points a week than Mark Andrews at this point in time.
Well, they're not using Andrews. They're not targeting him anymore.
They're not targeting him a lot. And in games where they can target him, like that game against the Browns, which they won, he got 2 touchdowns, five receptions on 5 targets. So for me, I know Jonnu has been doing well, and I know Downs looks like the favorite wide receiver of Minshew, but Jacoby Myers is the favorite wide receiver of Jimmy G when he comes back.
Mm-hmm.
He also looks decently okay with Aiden O'Connell, and who knows what will happen with Brian Hoyer if Brian Hoyer plays. And Shaheed has looked good with Derek Carr this year. And Kmet, if Fields comes back healthy with his grip strength, he's a valuable target for Fields. So I would rather
Maybe
have
he doesn't.
Kmet
He's just a
Shaheed
valuable target in
Jacoby.
that offense the way it's drawn. The Chicago offense, when it's actually run effectively, is actually designed to go through Komet.
And
Most people don't see it that way, but that's how it is.
And this is something to say, if you're going after Mark Andrews, like he was, a potential trade target that I said earlier, he only has 24 receptions on the year, 294 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he's still not in the top 4 of tight ends this year. So, that's the way it goes with Mark Andrews. Yeah. RGQ. That was the week that he was on my IR from the week before. And I forgot, and I didn't look because we were doing our show, and I didn't look at my lineup, and he got locked into the IR with 30 points. That would have helped because I would have won. So I feel your pain. And then I couldn't make any roster moves the rest of the weekend because he was locked in the IR and ended up playing. So that really sucked. Feel your pain, RGQ.
So Tucker, so Bob, to get back to Tucker here, he's got Etienne, Mostert, and Eckler.
Yeah, I think
those are the two out of the
play
three.
Eckler and Etienne.
Yeah.
And Mostert's the sexy play, I think, because he's just been good, very, very good, and he's going to continue to look good.
Here's the other risk I have with Mostert being on Sunday Night Football. I think there's a very good chance that he just has to show the world how smart he is, and they only throw the ball in Miami because he has to be the smartest person of all time. And I think Mostert is intentionally taken out of the game plan. I think Etienne is going back to what we said before. I think Etienne's the higher floor. Mostert always has an incredible ceiling, but there's always, and we know this moment is coming sooner than later, the moment when Mostert will break. It's what he does, and do you want to be holding the cards when Etienne's giving you such a favorable draw? So I that's why I lean Etienne. In fact, actually, Mostert's probably the spot where if you can move him now, you might be able to get peak value for moving Mostert.
Yeah, I mean, and it sucks to have to bench Mostert, but here's the thing I want to break it down for you. His best games were against some of the worst rush defenses.
And Philly ain't that.
Carolina, Giants, Denver, New England.
And
those defenses can't stop anyone. And you look at what Etienne has done, just going into the stats here for a moment, going into the game log. Etienne's best games in PPR, week 1 against the Colts, 21 points. Houston surprisingly has a decent defense, 17 points. Atlanta, that game was weird and gross. He scored 10 points. But in the last 2 weeks against Buffalo and Indy, 36 and 23. These are games that now when we look at Mostert not sharing the role, but Ahmed came out last week too and got 10, 16 points too. So Miami's just an electric offense. I'd be fine starting either Etienne or Mostert, but my preference is Etienne for sure. RGQ just looked at my league's rosters. Mark Andrews owner has Madison and Roschon at running back. Could do Waller and Warren. Hawkinson owner has J.J. Hurt and starting Osborne. Could do Waller Dell. Either of those trades for me, RGQ. I like the Hawkinson one better. I think that the guy with Madison and Roschon would love Warren. He has a really good potential to keep to carve out a role in the Steelers offense. So I would, that's for Mark Andrews. I like Mark Andrews to a degree, right? Like I just said, Hawkinson, yeah, you're losing Dell, but you're getting back the better player in that trade, I believe. Hawkinson is a valuable piece to the Vikings offense, just like Andrews is, but I think Hawkinson will be relied on more now that JJ is down. I would try to propose both. and see, if you like Mark Andrews more, try the Warren one first, because that takes away a little bit of your lineup decisions that you have. If you don't get Andrews, then try the better one with Dell and see what happens. Just pick which one you like, pick which one you're willing to deal with, which player you're willing to deal away. And I think that it will get accepted, to be quite honest with you. I think one of those will get accepted. Josh, how about if he throws Michael Mayer into that trade? Keep in mind, 20-man PPR, so no decent backup tight end on the roster.
See, he's going to be on the upswing, but the thing is, we were talking about with the Raiders is how much of them do you really want? I actually traded Mayer away earlier this morning. So I look at that as a team that has a bad offensive line, a bad defense, and now a bad quarterback. I don't want to get a piece of that action.
Yeah, I'm not in on Mayer. I'm not in on Mayer, but in a 20-man league, Mayer is a good start. I mean, he's gonna get targeted in a 20-man league.
That is true.
Start. So
as long as Adams is still hurt, he's going to get targeted. He's the number 3 when Adams comes back at best.
So I mean, here's the thing, Josh, is that when it comes down, Downs and Jonnu for Jacoby. Also, do you like Kmet Shaheed for Mark Andrews? I'm looking at it and I just like Myers, Shaheed, and Kmet better than the other players in that deal, regardless of if Michael Mayer's in that deal or not. I just like those other players a little bit better. Tucker, your 4-man league. Hey, Joe and I love random leagues. We love
nothing wrong
leagues.
with that, bro.
We love 8-man
nothing
leagues.
wrong.
We love 6-man, 12-man, 14, 32, 20. Doesn't matter. I start Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra is the play. Keenan Allen, I'm on the fence in our 8-team league of starting Devontae Adams over Drake London and Brandon Ayuk. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do yet about that.
So you're down on Adams is a safe way to say it.
But I'm down on Adams. I'm up on Amon-Ra. And Keenan Allen, for me, has a very realistic chance to perform really well against Kansas City. But, that game could go, like we said, with the Josh Palmer.
It's going to be low scoring.
It could go somewhere crazy. But the Amon-Ra, he's a dog. We know it. All 3 of those players are dogs. I think Amon-Ra has a better game, though.
Okay, guys, we're going to conclude here and do the
pick 2. If I'm picking 2 out of Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra,
it's Amon Allen.
It's Keenan Allen and Amon-Ra, 100%.
All right, so let's wrap the show up here, guys, with the 4 best bets of the weekend. In Buffalo, it's going to New England. The over-under right there is 40. Crush that over hard. That game should be a 43-point game. It's actually the lowest of our safe bets today. The second lowest, the Redskins are going to the Meadowlands. That is a 2.5-point dog as the Giants. Believe it or not, the Giants should actually be the favorite. Take either the Giants on the money line or with the points, you're getting a 3.5-point edge. Staying in that same game, the over-under is listed at 37.5. It seems weird that a team that hasn't scored a touchdown in forever that you'd be betting on the over with, but those 2 teams should add up to 43. Neither one of them play defense at all, and even with 2 of the worst quarterbacks in the league, they will get into the 40s. And then the following one, again, horrible teams with no defenses playing each other. The Raiders are going to Chicago. Somehow that over-under is at 37. Chicago lets up 37 when they wake up in the morning. Take the over there all day. It was great seeing you guys, and we'll be with you here a little bit later on.
Thanks for every question. We appreciate you. We appreciate everything.